5, 1944.
Today we will have a resolution on the floor.
Listen up.
Put forth by Congresswoman Elissa Slotkin. We're very proud of her experience in terms of national security under Democratic and Republican presidents, now a member of Congress, putting forth a resolution this week. Last week, in our view, the administration conducted a provocative, disproportionate airstrike against Iran, which endangered Americans, and did so without consulting Congress. When I was informed of this attack, the administration took responsibility for it over the weekend. I said, why did you not consult with Congress? Well, we held it in closely. We held it in closely. No, you have a responsibility to consult with Congress. No, we held it close. So whoever close means, as you see, there has been criticism from the Republicans about the briefing that was put forth yesterday by the administration on this subject. Some have asked, do you agree that this is the worst intelligence classified briefing that Congress has received from this administration? As some of you have heard me say, there is stiff competition for that designation of worst. So here we are to protect American lives and values. We are passing today a war powers resolution to limit the president's military actions. The administration must de-escalate and must prevent further violence. America and the world cannot afford war. Some of you have heard me say that in December I took a bipartisan delegation to the 75th anniversary of the Battle of the Bulge. It was just so remarkable to meet our VIPs, were our veterans who served at the Battle of the Bulge, some of them also at Normandy. Imagine the courage, teenagers, most of them at the time. But the compelling message from the veteran who spoke for them, along with the King of Belgium and the Archduke of Luxembourg and the President of Germany. The veteran who spoke, he spoke about the band of brothers, he spoke about allies working together, multilateralism, he spoke about the challenges they faced in those winters, reminding me really of Washington crossing the Delaware, because it was in December and it was snowing and they were not as prepared for snow and camouflage from snow as they needed to be. But just seeing their patriotism, their courage, those young people, and this veteran coming to speak for them, 90-some years old. At the end of his remarks, he said, I just have one message, and I don't know if it's appropriate to say, but I will. Pray for peace. Pray for peace. That's what we all do. Protecting the American people is our first responsibility. Protect and defend, an oath we take, not only of our Constitution, but of the American people. Pray for peace. That's what we must do. And so what happened, in the view of many of us, is not promoting peace, but an escalation. Not that we have any confidence in the goodness or the good intentions of Iran. And we certainly do not respect, and I, from my intelligence background, know just how bad Soleimani was. It's not because we expect good things from them, but we expect great things from us. Now, in terms of impeachment, you will keep asking me the same question. I keep giving you the same answer. As I said right from the start, we need to see the arena in which we are sending our managers. Is that?
I want to stop right there of the statement that she just made. It's not that we're expecting good things from them, but we're expecting great things from us. That's just about as one-sided as you can get in a statement of saying we expect the Americans, especially the Christian Americans, to bend over backwards and to basically take it up the rump. I mean, I realize that I'm glamourifying her statement a little bit, but it's never supposed to be that way. If they're supposed to be expecting great things out of the Americans, we should expect great things out of the Middle East, out of the people over there. Why are they any more or less different than we are in wanting to strive towards the same thing that we're striving towards, which is open, fair democracy for the benefit of not only peace, but the benefit of their own citizens over there? Why should they be any less or more required to do less than we are to do more? It should be equal. It should be equal. And I think that's the reason why that we have not succeeded in the Middle East Arabic uprising, the Arab uprising, is because we was expecting too much out of them and expecting too much out of us. I think I said that wrong. We was expecting less of them to the extent of expecting more of us. And it has put us in a very, very precarious state to the point that now we are playing second fiddle in regard towards trying to bring stability to that region. Whenever you look at the teachings of the Bible, where it says to let the meek inherit the earth, and in regard towards let the wheat grow with the shaft, it doesn't say let the lesser wheat grow with the greater shaft. It doesn't say let the greater shaft grow with the lesser wheat. It's equal in that concept. Let the wheat, which are the godly people, God's chosen, through the teachings of a righteous, holy God, let them grow equal with the shaft, which are the wicked, the mean, the cruel, the demonic, the ones that are twisted and upside down. So the very statement that she has made in regard to that, she has disproportionalized it in the degree that I have interpreted various holy scriptures of the meaning thereof. And that's one reason why that endless, cruel, insensitive, immoral behavior continues to happen over there every day against either Syria or the people over in Israel, or the innocent children that are having to be subjected to that type of evil, demonic, wicked thinking. Let's back her little statement up real quick before she gets involved in the impeachment trial to see exactly what she said about that. Hang on.
Too much to Ron. And we certainly do not respect, and I, from my intelligence background, know just how bad Soleimani was. It's not because we...
And it's not just Soleimani, okay? And it's not just dozens over there that's like tsunami. There's hundreds, there's thousands of tsunamis over there that want to play out towards dominating cruel and inhumane treatment upon to their own citizens. That's probably one of the best points that has been made in the past 5 days, 6 days now, since the airstrike happened towards killing that guy, is that it's not just him. there's a whole festation of people like him. It's like a beehive. And until you can make their own citizens understand that and realize that, they're going to basically be just like a bunch of puppets or a bunch of robots. And you're never going to see their own people stand up for their own independence and stand up for this type of atrocities that is happening to their own region. They have basically bamboozled those people in that type of thinking towards, oh, this is the way that it is, and this is the way that it's going to remain, and this is the way that we're going to have to, don't upset the apple cart. This is the, we're just slaves to this type of oppression and this type of environment. So let's just keep things like it is. In the meantime, the powerful and the wicked are steadily dominating over the poor and the weak. And that is not what God, the Heavenly Father, the God of Jacob, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of the Lord Jesus Christ, that is not what God intended to happen over there in the old Persian atmosphere or Persian Empire that is still just as much alive and as well today as it ever was, towards basically cruel core communism. Cruel core communism. And it's not just over there. It just so happens over there it's more obvious, but it's over in China. It's over in places in South America. It still exists over in Cuba. It still exists over in Russia. You know, whenever you have this type of tyranny that is just basically uprooting the wheat will never have a chance to stand equal to the tares. And that's what God was demanding, not requiring, but demanding that it was going to be a equal entity up onto this planet towards eventually the meek inheriting the earth.
We expect good things from them, but we expect, it's not because we expect good things from them.
It's not.
But we respect, and I, from my intelligence background, know just how bad Soleimani was. It's not because we expect good things from them, but we expect great things from us. Now, in terms of the...
To me, that's twisted. To me, that's saying to the Christian society up onto this planet, we're not supposed to have a backbone in expecting the very same requirements out of them as it is over here with us. That's just my interpretation of what she just said. Now, others may hear that and may glory and gleam over what the Speaker of the House just said. May glory and gleam. But I personally see it as it being unfair. I personally see it as it being incorrect towards interpreting what God intended of and for the true Christian society, regardless whether it's the Christian society over here in America, or the Christian society over in Europe, or the Christian society in other parts of the world. Why do you think all these horrible, horrible things have just recently come out of the closet pertaining to environmental global disasters? Yes, we have been nudging, inching towards bad environmental changes probably beginning in the 60s, whenever the revolution exploded towards everybody wanting cars and everybody wanting telephones and TVs and microwaves and having automobiles and electrical gizmos this and electrical gizmos that, and yeah, it's been inching towards a climax moment, but not like it has just within the past, I'm going to say the year 2000 anyways. Since the year 2000, which has been 20 years ago, it has absolutely exploded pertaining to the signs now that we're seeing on a international global scale pertaining to global warming. And it's going to intensify. If we think that this is the worst yet to come, pertaining to seeing massive storms, massive heat, massive flooding, massive droughts, massive this, massive that, we're only fooling ourselves. The only way to reverse this is for humanity to get it right. And I'm just not talking about going on a environmental spree towards everybody stop driving gas guzzlers and go to driving battery powered automobiles and wind turbines and solar this and solar that and alternative fuel sources. That's only one part of it. That's only one part of it. The other part of it is for people to go back and do thy first works over again, like it talks about in the first 4 chapters of Revelations, towards getting their lives in order, towards it being acceptable with the Heavenly Father. And then not only will we as a society down here upon to the planet be fighting against the evil demonic forces, but God will be on our side towards trying to help us fight the same forces.
Impeachment, you will keep asking me the same question. I keep giving you the same answer. As I said right from the start, we need to see the arena in which we are sending our managers. Is that too much to ask? In October, we put forth HR 660, which is a House resolution which talked about the terms under which we would proceed further proceed with the investigation, so that people knew what the battlefield would look like. We expect to see that here. I hear different things. I hear that they might want to, you've probably heard one way or another, some of them have suggested they might want to dismiss. Dismiss equals cover up. Dismiss equals admission that you're afraid of the facts, the truth, the witnesses, and the documentation. We would have hoped that, as with the Clinton process, that there would have been a bipartisan resolution determining how to proceed. Contrary to what the majority leader says, he says this is like the Clinton. No, it's not at all. And I sent our members yesterday 6 points in which it is, 6 of the points in which it is different. But nonetheless, at some point, we would hope that we would see from them what the terms of engagement will be.
She's using the word hope very, very flamboyantly. We hope this, we hope that, we hoping for peace, we're hoping for that, we're hoping for this. I want to throw out an old cliche that I was raised up under here in Northwest Tennessee. That is, you can hope in one hand and poo-poo in the other and see which one fills up the quickest. It's one thing to hope as far as it being broad and what's the word that I'm looking for? kind of like hoping that if you follow the end of a rainbow, you're going to find treasure. It's one thing to hope whenever it's not realistic. It's not realistic hope. You as well as I know that we can follow all the rainbows all day long. That's kind of like believing in the tooth fairy. But ultimately, in the end, we're not going to find no treasure at the end of the rainbow. So it's realistical hope. The hope that I talk about is the hope that was predicted in the Bible thousands and thousands of years ago that really don't have nothing to do with me. It don't have nothing to do with her. It don't have nothing to do with our leader. It don't have nothing to do with anybody else upon this planet other than the men and women that help to resonate the Bible in its truest form, that brought forth the ideal or the identity of the Bible, saying that one day there's going to be a utopia or peace. This is not a rainbow hope. This is not a unobtainable hope like it is with the rainbow. The rainbow is a unattainable hope. The Bible talks about a promise, a covenant that goes a step further than just hope, but it's actually a promise or a covenant of such. And until humanity is willing to wake up to that reality pertaining to the covenant that has been made, the covenant of peace, the covenant of utopia, that the Bible take me completely out of the equation. Take her out of the equation. Let's just look at the Bible face value for what the Bible says. These are things that is not just inconsistent of something that humanity hopes for, kind of like looking at a rainbow, but these are actually promises or covenants that has come out of the Holy Bible to not just give us a sense of direction, but a sense of reality. And this is the very thing that humanity has been going in the opposite direction of. You can look at the statistics. You can look at the facts. Since the 50s, divorce rates has increased every year, every decade, for the past 4 or 5 decades. And now it's reached a point now that I think over half within the first 2 to 5 years wind up in a divorce. And it's getting worse. Not better, but worse. We're going in the wrong direction towards peace and utopia. Once more, the type of hope that she's talking about falls under the old cliche of you can hope in one hand and poo-poo in the other and see which one fills up the quickest. And I think the way that she's presenting this hope, I'm pretty sure the hand that you're poo-pooing in will be the one that fills up quicker than the one that you're hoping in. Kind of like hoping for a tooth fairy or hoping for treasure at the end of a rainbow. It's unrealistical thinking, the way that she's presenting these hope analogies. As I have said before and I'll say again, the Bible that talks about peace, literal P-E-A-C-E, coming out of not only Revelations chapter 6 verses 3 and 4 pertaining to the red horse, pertaining to the second seal. But there's other correspondence in the Bible that embrace the very thing about peace and utopia in the form of a covenant or a promise. Once more, you got to look at the whole picture and not just parts of the little bitty pictures. And the big picture is Christ himself said that it would have been easier for all of heaven and for all of earth to pass than for one jot or one tittle, one explanation point, one word in the Bible to fail. That means if there's not true peace, if there's not true utopia, if there's not a true revival, God himself will bring this to an abrupt end. To the point that if he can't succeed in one area, he will succeed in another. As I have said before, and I'll say again, these events that we're seeing that are on a biblical catastrophic form, regardless whether it's floods, fires out west, hurricanes, earthquakes, the fires out right now burning in Australia. These things is only intensifying. Watching all the icebergs melting and dropping off into the ocean, knowing that each and every one of them as it's dropping is adding that much more of a ocean level of a higher water table that eventually is going to be devastating to some of your islands and to some of your outer layer Gulf Coast areas. And eventually, and people don't talk about this a lot, the Everglades down there in Florida is going to be in great, great trouble towards bringing fresh water supply to the people in the Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and parts of Tampa, give or take about 10 million, 11, 12 million people. Eventually, those people are going to be in dire, dire situations towards not having fresh water supplies to adequately have for their people. The hope that she's talking about is a unrealistical hope. Kind of like hoping that if I follow the end of the rainbow, I'll find treasure. Well, we know that you could follow 1,000,000 rainbows and you're not going to find no treasure.
No, it's not at all. And I sent our members yesterday 6 points in which it is, 6 of the points in which it is different. But nonetheless, at some point we would hope that we would see from them what the terms of engagement will be. We are ready. We are proud of our defense of the Constitution of the United States. We are concerned that the senators will not be able to live up to the oath that they must take to have an impartial trial. So much for that. At the same time as this is all going on, it's important to note that there's so many other things of concern to the American people. One is the assault on the Affordable Care Act that this administration is engaged in the courts, in the Congress, and we are fighting them in the courts, in the Congress, and in the country. But right now, they are in the court. Instead of defending the law of the land, as is the responsibility of the Justice Department, this administration is fighting the law of the land. That means benefit for pre-existing conditions, no lifetime limits or annual limits, child staying on your policy for 26, being a woman no longer being a pre-existing condition. The list goes on and on that they want to tear down. So with all of the other, shall we say, distractions going on, which are a collateral benefit to the administration because it is a distraction, as they are masterful at, of what's going on. In addition to that, and related to health, is the statement from the administration that they're no longer going to enforce the NEPA, the National Environmental Protection Act. This means more polluters will be right there next to the water supply of our children. That's a public health issue. That they, in their denial of climate, they are going to not use the climate issue as anything to do with environmental decision making. Public should know this. Denial about the climate crisis in the midst of fires in Australia, and we have them in our own country. And then I'll close by just talking about how proud we are of the work that our members have done for the people. We have moved to lower healthcare costs by lowering the cost of prescription drugs. H.R. 3, wildly popular in the country, hopefully and passed the House before we left. We also were proud to pass the U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreement, which is sitting over in the Senate. It's sitting over there with maybe 400 bills we've sent over, more than 275 of them bipartisan legislation. One of them we observed yesterday, the 9th anniversary of the assault on Gabby Gifford's life. This is a bullet, and I'm aware that's of the highest priority, because if they would pass this bill, it would save lives, the bill to have sensible background check legislation. So again, we're proud of our legislative agenda to lower healthcare costs, keep the American people safe, build bigger paychecks by building the infrastructure. And this coming week, in the next period of time, our chairman, led by Chairman DeFazio of the Infrastructure and Transportation Committee, will be putting forth our most current initiative on I say climate because you can't do infrastructure without having a recognition of resilience and green technologies.
I want to stop right there and weigh in on what you just said, because I think it's crucial pertaining to climate change. I personally believe that it has become so ecstatically hot and dry up onto the planet that it has literally intensified the deterioration of a lot of our roads and a lot of our highways, and to some degree even helped the deterioration of old metal bridges and old wooden structures, that most of your wooden structures are now not even in existence any longer. But I personally believe that this environmental hazard that we're looking at all over the planet has literally intensified a great deal of our infrastructure damage. I have noticed just recently, just within the past 3 or 4 years since I've come back to Tennessee, the roads are deteriorating on an astronomical degree as far as what they was 4 or 5 years ago versus what they are today. And I blame a lot of it in the area where I'm at here on the farming community, towards big heavy combines and big heavy bean trucks and corn trucks driving up and down the road, bringing obnoxiously excessive weight up onto our road system. That has been a contributing factor to the roads deteriorating the way that they have. But I also blame a great deal of it on the environmental changes pertaining to the world is no longer functioning like it used to, pertaining to the globe. And if the truth be known, the globe is actually shrinking with so much heat that is being generated from the inside out. I don't know if there's any way of properly measuring the earth from tip to tip, from point to point, pertaining to how much mass that we're actually losing every year. But I'm pretty sure if there was a way of measuring it from outer space, we would see a significant decrease of the land mass, that the ball is getting smaller. As the ball is getting smaller, the ocean tables are getting higher. Do you follow what I'm saying? The ball is becoming smaller and the motion levels are rising and getting hotter, okay, because of the melting of the poles, but it's also having a profound effect upon to our infrastructure. If I'm not mistaken, this is another area that I disagree with Trump on. He's fixing to pass some sort of a legislation deal over here in America of going around all these EPA rules in regard towards allowing for big projects, regardless whether it's building canals or bringing in big oil pipes or whatever. He's fixing to go in the opposite direction once more again. Instead of being part of the solution to the problem with our environmental changes, he's actually being a contributor to it by going in the direction that he's going in. And the guy just isn't on top of his game whenever it comes to these horrendous things that are happening to our planet. And it's not just happening over here in America. It's happening all over, on every continent. It's happening on a global scale, not just on one particular area. And if we do not reverse this, it will be catastrophic to humanity. Absolutely catastrophic. Those are some of the disagreeing factors that I have with Donald Trump. Don't flatter yourself in thinking that just because I agree with one thing with Donald Trump, that I agree with all things, because I don't. There's lots of stuff that I disagree with his policy making towards what he's engaged in, not only on international affairs, but also in our affairs here in the United States. And that's one of them, and it has always been one of them, pertaining to him not acknowledging global warming as it being real. Once more, you can hope in one hand and poo-poo in the other and see which one fills up the quickest. And 9 times out of 10, according to man's hope, you know which one's going to fill up the quickest? It's probably going to be the one that you're poo-pooing in. And I hate to be so raw. I hate to be so straightforward. I hate to be so hardcore in trying to get my message across to these hard-headed Homo sapiens down here up onto this planet. But if we don't watch, friends, we're not going to have a planet. And if we don't have a planet, guess what? We don't have life. We don't have no say-so. We don't have no existence. We have lost the game.
So that's where we are there. Now, today, we again send sad condolences to the person who lost his or her life in Puerto Rico, others whose homes were damaged. We call upon the White House to stop its unlawful withholding of funds from Puerto Rico. We also, there are needs that need to be met. There has been a disaster designated.
There's another area that needs to be addressed pertaining to all these people being on all these islands. We're still thinking that these hurricanes or these catastrophes are just once in a blue moon occurrences that we're going to have to be subjected to in our lifetime. Wrong again. Wrong again. It's kind of like building on the edge of a cliff out in California somewhere. We're going to have to wake up, folks, if we plan on surviving. We're going to have to stop doing ignorant, stupid stuff. The Bible says to flee into the mountains whenever you shall see these things starting to occur. Get out of the low-lying areas. Don't be building cities in a bowl down in Louisiana, New Orleans, knowing good and well that the floodwaters are coming and it's just a matter of time before the city is going to cease to exist. It's just a matter of time. If you build that house on that cliff while the erosion is happening with the rains, that eventually the cliff is going to fall in, and when the cliff falls in, your house is going to fall in with it. I don't care if you got a $2 million home or a $15 or a $25 million home. You're going down with the cliff because you didn't have enough sense to get out of the rain. It's kind of like what we had going on whenever we was working in the construction industry. We had a saying, whenever a cloud would come over, that the first drop of rain was the Lord's fault. But the second drop of rain that fell on you, if you didn't have enough sense to get out of the rain, that second drop of rain was not the Lord's fault. That second drop of rain was your fault because you didn't have enough sense to figure out to get out of the path of the rainstorm. People are going to have to wake up towards these islands and stuff that have been desecrated, and I realize that they have a lot of sentimental value. A lot of sentimental value towards where they have lived from generation to generation, and they want to continue to live in that environment. But whenever the environment is changing, maybe it's best that you no longer live in that environment. Maybe it's best that you go to high ground, like Jesus predicted and told his people to flee into the mountains. Flee into the mountains. He was telling his people to do that for safety concerns. Safety concerns of getting away from these strong environmental changes that was going to fall up onto the planet that he could foresee that was going to occur because of the hard-headedness of humanity. So you can throw oodles and gobs of trillions and trillions of dollars back into these devastated areas. And I promise you, it's just a matter of time before it's going to happen again. And it's going to happen again until humanity wakes up in regard towards what's going on a global scale. We're going to see these environmental changes grow worse and worse and worse. There is no ifs, ands, buts about it. That is one of the reasons why that we're in the shape that we're in, is because we're not smart enough to identify the signs. Just like working in the construction field. Hanging steel back years ago whenever I used to be an iron worker. The first drop of rain was the Lord's fault. But that second drop of rain was not the Lord's fault if you didn't have enough sense to get out of the rain. If the people don't have enough sense to see what's going on, including Donald Trump and whoever else is against the global warming catastrophes that are happening pertaining to the environmental changes, if they don't have enough sense to see what's happening, then it's not the Lord's fault. It's your own fault that you didn't pay attention to the signs.
It's been a disaster designated, but the ongoing withholding of funds appropriated by Congress to Puerto Rico is illegal, and we call upon the administration to cease and desist that illegal activity. So what else do we have here? Maybe we'll just take some questions from all of you. Nancy? Yes.
You say that you need to know what the arena looks like
Yes.
in the Senate. How long are you prepared to hold on to the articles of impeachment if you don't get the answers you're looking for?
Well, it's interesting just to listen to what they say, because they may not. The other day, you probably heard the leader say, I'm glad to show you what it is when I'm ready. But we don't know when he's going to be glad to be ready to show it to us. So there is something that they will have. And then he says, well, we'll pass it once we get the articles. In the past few weeks, since we've had this, shall we say, impasse, because they won't reveal the terms of engagement, many things have been accomplished that are collateral benefit to the discussion. And they relate to, on December 20th, new emails showed that 91 minutes after Trump's phone call with the Ukrainian president, a top OMB aide asked DOD to hold off on sending military aid to the Ukraine, directly related to that call. On December 29th, it was public revelations about Mulvaney's role in the delay of the aid, the effort of lawyers at OMB, DOJ, and White House to justify the delay, and the alarm that the delay caused within the administration, because everyone was not in agreement. Last Thursday, newly unredacted Pentagon emails exposed serious concerns by administration officials about the legality of the president's hold on the aid, aid to Ukraine. And just this week, Bolton announced that he would comply with a subpoena compelling his testimony. His lawyers have stated he has new relevant information. These and other of our investigation and our articles necessitate a fair trial with documents and witnesses. They don't want documents, the documentation. They don't want witnesses. They may want a dismissal, which is proof that they cannot clear the president of the wrongdoing that he has put forth.
So are you going to hold the articles indefinitely?
No, I'm not holding them indefinitely. I'll send them over when I'm ready. And that will probably be soon. I just, he said, if you don't send them over, I'm going to pass the Mexico-U.S. Canada trade agreement. Okay. No, we want to see what they're willing to do and the manner in which they will do it. But we will not let them say, oh, this is just like Clinton, fair is fair. It's not. Documentation, witnesses, facts, truth. That's what they're afraid of.
Speaker Posey, you call it, the Democrats call him a clear and present danger to democracy.
Who are we talking about?
House Democrats in the impeachment call the president.
Oh, I thought you meant Mitch McConnell. Okay.
But shouldn't we move more expeditiously, given the fact that we raised this serious concern of the president's motives to...
No, I think we should move smartly and strategically. Yes, Jack.
This is an H-Conrad
Yes,
resolution.
a concurrent resolution, yes.
There's been some criticism from both sides that this should be binding. I know there's some parliamentary question about it being privileged. But why not make this with real teeth, to make this like an AUMF?
This is with real teeth. If you are familiar with the War Powers Act, and I'll get you the text, the War Powers Tax enables two approaches to go forward. One is a concurrent resolution, and it gives the procedure for that, which we will be following today, and it gives a path for concurrent for a H-Con resolution. We're taking this path because it does not require a statement by a signature of the President of the United States. This is a statement of the Congress of the United States, and I will not have that statement be diminished by whether the President will veto it or not.
Many of your members have raised serious concerns about the timing of the strike against Soleimani, the administration's justification. You've been briefed. Do you think that the administration misled the American people about an imminent attack?
I think that it's very unfortunate that right now, because I was briefed in the Gang of Eight and I was briefed in the what did he call it, demeaning and worst classified briefing that the Republican senators ever heard yesterday. So at this point, in terms of what is in the public domain, difficult to address some of what they contended. However, I will say this, because I was informed by phone call, as I mentioned to you earlier, I think I did anyway, that when I was briefed by the Secretary of Defense and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs over the weekend, taking responsibility for the killing, that it was disdainful in terms of not consulting with Congress, dismissive. We held it closely, really. So if you want us to all join together, let us have a strategy that we work together on. I do not believe, in terms of what is in the public domain, that they have made the country safer by what they did. And that is what our responsibility is. We'll have more discussion of this on the floor today at some length. But it's really, again, as I go back to the Battle of the Bulge, pray for peace. We must avoid war. And the cavalier attitude of this administration, it's stunning. And the president to say, I inform you by reading my tweets. No, that's not the relationship that our founders had in mind in the Constitution of the United States when they gave power to the president, to the White House, to do one thing in terms of our national security, and to the Congress to declare war and to allocate resources and the rest. So this is your question is an important one. We will have 2 hours of debate. Now we're on the rule, 2 hours on the bill today to put forth some of the factual basis of the concern that we have. And let me just say this, because you hear the administration say, well, we were justified because the Office of Legal Counsel said. The Office of Legal Counsel is a tool of the President of the United States. That's who that is. So whatever the president wants to declare legal, his Office of Legal Counsel declares it so. So it's misleading to the public as to what the War Powers Act, Article 2 that gives the president certain powers, Article 1 that gives the Congress certain powers are. It's a very big issue now because it's nothing less than preventing war as we honor our first responsibility to protect the American people.
Madam Speaker,
Yesterday
we came to the Senate. Several people came out and said the briefers told them that putting out information, debating the War Powers Act would empower Iran. The House floor is debating war powers around Iran. What do you say to the Trump administration if they're telling you that's empowering Iran?
I don't spend a whole lot of time telling them anything because I don't know what their basis of judgment is to receive information. However, I will say this. If they think that any statement they make is there to curtail public debate on a subject as serious as this, it just explains to you the seriousness of the situation that we are in. We will debate on the floor of the House. Now, we are not going on the floor talking about what we learned in the, and they said at the beginning, they said, even if you read it in the newspaper, if you hear it in here, you can't talk about it. And then they proceed to tell us many things that we have read in the local metropolitan journals that are seen on TV. But that's foolish. It's completely foolish. And as I say, we have no illusions about Iran, no illusions about Soleimani. He was a terrible person, did bad things. But it's not about how bad they are. It's about how good we are, protecting the people in a way that prevents war.
Okay, if it's about how good we are, under the War Crime Act, where do we, this is just a question, where do we as a society draw a red line in the sand and say enough is enough whenever it comes to basically being somebody's guinea pig, or being somebody's whipping post towards losing our own integrity. Where does this begin and end under the statute of the War Crimes Act? Especially if the whole primary purpose for us setting up our government the way that we have set it up is the fact that if certain high-ranking officials, especially the president, knows without a shadow of a doubt that there are imminent danger, and he can stop that imminent danger, what's the purpose for us even having a president if you ain't going to allow for him to be able to act upon dangerous scenarios such as rootless terrorists, regardless whether they be domestic or foreign? People are obviously deceived whenever it comes to factual facts pertaining to our constitutional policies. Whenever it comes to an actual all out and out war, yes, that's supposed to be handled through the powers of Congress. And I don't think that that has been implemented probably since what happened during 9/11, whenever we attacked the places that we attacked and went into Afghanistan and all those other places over there. I don't know all. I don't have the charts in front of me right now as far as the geographics of it, but I think that was the last time that Congress actually moved upon the appropriation of war. But at the same time, the President of the United States has his responsibilities, especially whenever it comes to the well-being and the safety of the American citizens. And if he knowingly knows that an occurrence is going to take place, and he does not act upon that, then he's in violation of his oath towards what he promised to the American people, that he would protect and defend not only the Constitution, but the American people. And he could be held in not only contentment, but being an accessory to the danger. In other words, if he knows that there's going to be an attack and he don't act upon it, it would be the same thing if he himself was doing the act, because he didn't act upon the knowledge of knowing that attack was imminent. So you have to look through the BS in what the Speaker of the House is talking about right now in something minor versus something major. Okay? If the people in Iran, Iraq, if they want to continue to provoke, and that's exactly what they've been doing now for the past 2 or 3 years, they have been provoking us in their actions towards wanting to start some sort of a major calamity over there. If we don't act upon to it, then basically we become nothing more than a floor mat or a whipping post for the demonic evildoers to take advantage of us. It's similar towards the very scenario that I was dealing with out here at 291 Thompson Road. And people was coming either onto the yard or out here on the roads and stopping and wanting to get in some sort of a pissing contest towards wanting to get in some sort of a confrontation, an alteration, some sort of a fight out here towards going to finish me off. I'm going to use that analogy. Finish me off. And because I was smart enough, not because I was cowardly, but because I was smart enough not to fall into their entrapments. Now, this is where the president has to use his abilities to understand that sometimes, whenever these occurrences happen, it's nothing more than an entrapment. And in the entrapment, the evildoers can twist it around and say, you see there, he ain't no better than we are. He was the instigator to all this. That's where you got to use good, sound wisdom and good, sound judgment in your responses towards these temptations. And that's all it is. It's a temptation to see if you'll fall for it. That way you'll get on the same level that they're on. That's exactly what this is. And I think our leadership here in America has been able to identify that, because if the truth be known, our president could have done already acted upon 2 or 3 other events that has happened with the Iranians in their provoking tactics 2 or 3 times way before now. 2 or 3 times way before now. And it's reached a point kind of like the good dog and the bad dog tactic, that if you watch animals, most of the time they'll gnaw on one another, they'll scratch on one another, and eventually one may bite a little hard on one's leg or one's ear or one's neck, to the point that one yelps a little bit, oh! But then they'll, 5 minutes later, they'll go right back into playing the same way that they've been playing before, and they'll rough one another up a little bit, and they'll do this and do that. The big dog, if he's a good dog, there's bad and good in everything, regardless whether it's humans, dogs, raccoons, deer, or cows or horses. The big dog, he'll be gracious to that little dog up until a certain extent. But when that little dog continues to want to bite and bring harm and hurt to the big dog enough, eventually the big dog will turn on that little dog, and he'll put that little dog in his place real quick. Real quick. He's aggressive in his actions, but at the same time, he's graceful enough to be able to tolerate a certain amount of pawing, a certain amount of gnawing, a certain amount of playing between the big dog and the little dog. Well, the United States has always been the big dog. We're the big dog. Okay? So we have to be careful. It's like walking 2 different tight lines at the same time. We have to be careful in our stability, in our own dignity towards who we are, towards being the big dog. But at the same time, whenever the little dog continues to badger and badger and badger, eventually the little dog has to be put back into its place, because you are the little dog and I'm still the big dog. I'm just using that as an analogy about our War Crimes Act towards not being a bully in the eyes of the global world, to the point that now you look like that you're the bad guy. Just because you're the big dog don't make you the bad dog. Because there's a lot of big dogs out there that are good dogs. But if you provoke them bad enough and long enough and hard enough, they'll show you what's inside them. And that's exactly where the judicial system in this county has failed here of the events that was going on in my particular life. Once more, narrowing it down on a one-to-one level pertaining to David and I out here. We kept crying out, SOS, 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 help, 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 help. There's not no telling how many telephone calls, how many incident reports that was filled out up there in the Weakley County Courthouse, or the Weakley County Sheriff's Department. Incident after incident after incident. And we was solely relying upon the judicial system in Weakley County of doing their jobs. And if they would have done their jobs effectively and professionally on the front end, we wouldn't have had to have went through so much agony and so much pain towards this thing being drawn out day after day after day after day after week after week after month after month after year until now, going on the 5th year. I think the judicial system in this area has finally caught wind towards what has actually been occurring out here, towards, instead of Juby being the agitator, or instead of Juby being the stalker, it's the other way around. It's been various bad actors in the community that has purposely been coming down to 291 Thompson Road that has been provoking some sort of a calamity or a fight. And that's what we have expressed to the judicial system again and again and again, beginning with Tommy Moore and other law enforcement agencies throughout this area that just went in one ear and out the other. You know why it went in one ear and out the other? Is because they was wanting Juby to get on the same level as the bad dog. And just so happens, Juby was smart enough not to fall for the bait. Juby identified what Juby was dealing with, regardless whether it was coming from the Ridgway family, the Sheffield family, or all these other different individuals, these bad actors that continuously kept coming out here badgering and sabotaging and vandalizing and just agonizing a fight, bringing the fight to this property. And it was only through and by God that I was smart enough. Didn't have nothing to do with cowardly. As many times as I've come close to death, this ain't got nothing to do with courageousness. This has got to do with wisdom in knowing when to choose your battles, knowing when to choose your fights. Whenever the right appropriate time comes that Juby needs to declare himself as being on the defensive side, I promise you Juby will show himself in that way if he has to. And I hope that I don't have to. I really do. Because I'd rather submit myself in the true Christian form towards turn thy cheek and offer thy other. Do good to those who despitefully use you and take advantage of you. I hope that I'll be able to continue to stay under those guidelines, under those Christian principles, to where I can maintain my Christian identity with not only my personal relationship with God, but with the people. But if it ever comes a time that I have to put aside that in which what I know is principally right, just in the degree of being able to defend my own life because I feel like that my life is in jeopardy, I promise you, I will not hesitate for 1 second to do the very same thing. And I hope to God that Donald Trump and the American government will do the exact same thing. That if it comes time to show who's the big dog, there'll be some aggressive fighting going on. And it won't be just to go on a pissing contest to see who can win. It will be in the defense of survival. And that's basically where we're at right now in America. Whenever it comes to us either being somebody's whipping post, somebody's floor mat, to the point that they can abuse us, take advantage of us, violate our own principles, or us standing up for our own integrity. And I think that's the part there that the Speaker of the House really don't understand whenever it comes to these values and these practices that our forefathers and our founders that founded this country. I really don't think that that's the part that she understands. It's kind of like whenever my father would tell all us boys before he flew in to whip our asses that this is going to hurt me a whole lot worse than it's going to hurt you. Even though it hurt like hell while we was being smacked around with a belt and having our hair pulled. Maybe it did hurt my father in his heart and in his mind worser than it did us. I'm not him. I don't know what he was feeling at the time that he was feeling what he was feeling. We didn't think that he was feeling anything. We thought that he was a loose cannon, and we thought that he was aggressive and couldn't handle his emotions to the point that he was violent and he was abusing us, not only verbally but also emotionally and physically. But maybe it was really hurting him. I'm not him, and he's gone now, so I don't know. I can't ask him those questions. It's all got to do with the intent. It's got to do with one's motive. You know, anybody can run over a child on a bicycle and kill an innocent human being. And that's a whole lot different in their motive towards actually wanting to become a murderer and go out here and kill a bunch of people just for the pure pleasure of killing a bunch of people. You got to be able to rightly divide the differences between wrong and right, regardless whether it be on an individual level or it be on a government level or it be on a global level. You got to be willing to understand the differences between and rightfully separate the differences between what is right, what is wrong, what is expected out of us as a nation, what is expected out of us under the War Crimes Act, what is expected of us pertaining to our integrity, and what we're willing to deal with and what we're not willing to deal with, especially whenever it comes to the safety and the well-being of our own people under this right here, under the War Powers Act. That's the part that I don't think she gets. Once more, I don't totally agree with everything that our Mr. Trump is involved in pertaining to environmental issues. But I don't agree with everything that she's spewing out of her mouth in this relentless, insecure hope that she keeps blabbing out about. Well, we hope this and we hope that. And yeah, and I hope that one day I'll find treasure at the end of one of these rainbows that pops up every so often too. But realistically, you know that's not going to happen. So you have to be realistical in these ideologies that you're pumping out to the American people, because people like myself are going to be able to see through these events and understanding what's actually going on, what has went on and what is going on, especially whenever it comes to the fairness of God's chosen, the fairness of the wheat versus the shaft. It's not fair for the shaft to have dominance over the wheat. And at the same time, the ungodly, the heathen, the barbaric, the atheist, the agnostic will say, well, it's not fair for the wheat to dominate the shaft. That's where there has to be agreements and compromises, regardless whether it be countries, communities, or just one-on-one people trying to live out their lives in a fair, dignified way that they expected to be treated under our Constitution and our righteous, holy Savior by the name of Jesus Christ.
Not have us producing again and again generations of veterans who are suffering because of it. Let me just close by saying this. When we were there, and I met many of these veterans at 70th anniversary of Normandy. When I met them there, I said, well, my uncle was in World War II, close to the Battle of the Bulge. They said, oh, we went there next. And these were so brave teenagers, mostly. They were 18, 19, some 17 years old. And when we talked to them this time, because deeper relationships over time, they said, I never wanted to kill anybody. I didn't want to kill the Germans. I was incapacitating them. I would shoot them in the leg or something. And then one of them told me, I killed somebody, and I found out later he was a doctor, and I've always carried that with me. I said, well, you were instructed to shoot him, because a superior said, you take him, I'll take him, And he said, well, I still never forget that. So we all would die for our country. We take pride in saying that. But to kill for our country is a pretty traumatic thing. So when we want to engage in these, whatever you want to call this that the president engaged in, we have to be really careful about how we endanger our men and women in uniform who courageously, patriotically put themselves out there to protect and defend. Any other questions?
Once more, instead of the president acting carelessly in his decision towards taking out this terrorist, he acted cautiously, not carelessly, but cautiously, in thinking that if you can cut this off at the corner, maybe you can prevent from things even escalating. I mean, I heard John Kerry last night, Heinz 57 man, get on national TV and degrade President Trump like he was one of the most stupidest individuals that's ever walked the planet. Because it's John Kerry that stood heel and toe with Obama towards ever giving that country over there all that money and giving them the rights to uranium to be able to start making nuclear stuff. It was John Kerry and that administration that basically walked into that entrapment and said, okay, sure, we'll go ahead and give you this. I understand the money part. That by rights, the United States owed Iran a great deal of money, and if you'll compile it with all the interest, with what we've been owing them, as long as we've been owing them, in making that agreement the way that they made the agreement, they probably saved millions, if not billions of dollars in going ahead and making the agreement with the Iranian people and saying, okay, we're going to go ahead and give you this amount of money. I understand that. And I don't have a problem in that. Because if we owed them, we owed them. But don't give the farm away. And that's exactly what they done. They didn't just give them the money that we rightfully owed them, but now we're going to give them the green light to create something that can basically start the whole planet into a nuclear holocaust. Out of all that hate mongering that goes on over there, do you really feel like that was the right decision to make towards giving them the green light in all that uranium and all that nuclear stuff over there? Once more, this is an area pertaining to our military that I stand firm with. No, that was not the right decision. Not only do people here in America believe that it was the wrong decision towards what Obama had done, but the leader of Israel and other leaders over there basically said the exact same thing, as well as leaders all over the globe. You know why? Because the people over in Iran have not proven themselves worthy enough to be able to contain and control such of a substance such as nuclear. Not whenever you have all this hate mongering that's still in just as much of an existence today as what it was not just a few years ago, but hundreds of years ago, if not thousands of years ago. Whenever you have these same practices that's being injected from one generation to another generation to another generation pertaining to hate mongering, and all of a sudden we're going to trust you just out of the blue? I don't think so. You're asking for a calamity. You're asking for a disaster. Until they have proven themselves worthy of being confident enough to maintain something like that, you still need to be very, very cautious and persistently on the defensive whenever it comes to these type of activities going on over there. Because I promise you, and various nuclear in the atomic energy knows this, that it is always a possibility. Just like the movie War Games, whenever the computer was going out of control, and this bomb blowed up, and that bomb blowed up, and this country retaliated, and that country retaliated, and this happened, and that happened. And when it was all said and done with, the computer said that no one won the game. Kind of like playing tic-tac-toe. There is certain elements that could fall into the arena pertaining to nuclear atomic energy that there would be no winner. No winner. And if something like that ever erupted, it could be just like dominoes falling. One would retaliate against the other would retaliate against the other, and the next thing you know, we would be looking at a global catastrophe. A global catastrophe. And if we think what we have seen just in the past few years pertaining to the floods, the fires, the hurricanes, the earthquakes, if we think that those things is horrible towards watching right in front of our very eyes, we ain't seen nothing yet. If something like that gets unleashed up onto this planet, we have not seen nothing. So there has to be somebody that's in the playbook, that's a whistleblower globally, that says enough is enough. We have gone to the edge too close. Regardless whether it be a terrorist leader over in Iran or a terrorist leader over here in America pertaining to David Koresh and not David Koresh, but the people that blowed up the Oklahoma building, or other bad actors here in America that wanted to bring harm and hurt to innocent lives, like Eric Rudolph. As far as I'm concerned, the president done the right thing. They seen a problem that was escalating. They tried to cut it off at the bud. They tried to stop it from growing and intensifying. I realize that there's other people out there that don't agree with that. I realize that. And that's fine. You know, if you don't agree with it, that's fine. But at the same time, take into consideration, you're not the president. I'm not the president. We only have one president.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Because the airstrike targeting General Soleimani happened in Iraq, is it time for the House to consider a broader AUMF? I know that that's sort of the legal justification the administration has put forward with this airstrike. Is it time for Congress to get rid of the 2001, 2002 AUMF?
For sure. Well, we did get rid of the AUMF of 2002, and it was in an appropriations bill, and it passed in a bipartisan way. And in the dark of night, the then Speaker Ryan just took it out. It was highly unusual. Highly unusual. They just went and took it out. I mean, that's ridiculous, but that's what he did. So Congress has already passed rejecting, after it passed both houses, he took it out before it was signed. So we will have that resolution coming up soon under leadership of Congresswoman Barbara Lee, whose wedding we observed today. And then the question is, what do we do about an AUMF? It's harder than you would think, because an AUMF, so who's president, a Democrat or Republican, how much power, confidence do you have in that person, regardless of party, to execute an AUMF? And the decisions that have to be made about an AUMF, it's important to note, are what is the timing of it? This one is too long. It didn't have a date. Should have a date. Not one that couldn't be renewed, but nonetheless it should have a date. The timing, the geography, what are we talking about? This was to go into Iraq. It was used then to pursue Al-Qaeda, different places, and here we are. And third, what is the scope? Are we talking about boots on the ground? Are we talking about air cover? What are we talking about in terms of scope? So timing, geography, and scope. When you have that debate, it's, well, I want the president to have as much power, or I want the president not to have as much power. So it's hard. It's harder than you would think, but we have to do it. And when we do it, we have to have it with enough time that is realistic militarily, but also not endless, so that we're in a situation that we're in now. So to your point, the argument would be made that putting the shoe on the other foot, if the United States had a high level, maybe the second most important person in the country, assassinated wherever, the United States might consider that assault on our country, right? And the Iranians might as well, even though this took place at the Iraqi airport. And so it's foggy. There are those who think, well, it was in Iraq, so it counts. But it was an assault on Iran, so it shouldn't count. I don't think there's anybody who thinks that AUMF would apply in Iran. To your other point on it, though, it is it needs to be addressed, rewritten, because we have to have an authorization of use of military force specific to the danger that we are addressing. One last question.
You had mentioned the Clinton impeachment trial, the agreement anything that this says on documents. What other details specifically are you waiting to hear from Senator McConnell? And why not fully turn over these negotiations now to Senator Schumer?
Well, they are in the Senate hands. This is the Senate, and they have tried to have a bipartisan approach to how they would conduct the investigation as what are we calling it? The trial, conduct the trial. But feebly, the majority leader has said this is just like Clinton, except it isn't. It's exactly not like Clinton in that he won't do a bipartisan agreement on how to proceed. So that's very important. But it is not incidental to say, but for the documentation and the witnesses. Now, now, separate from all of that, under the House Senate rules of 1986, what is allowed for the presentation from the House is one person to speak. One person to speak. So are those the terms? Is that what we should be ready for? Or is there something else that they have in mind? It's one person to speak for the House and one person to speak for the White House. Did you know that? 1986. So is that the rule under which they're going? That all we want to know is what are the rules? It doesn't mean we have to agree to the rules or we have to like the rules. We just want to know what they are. So getting back to sports, because that's all we live, right? Football, college, high school, professional. Do we send in our team or do we have to send in special team as well as the team? Because we have to know what that trial is about.
Why not send the articles over and turn the whole negotiations over to Senator Schumer?
Oh, yeah, they've had the negotiation. The senator has said he doesn't have to have witnesses and the rest. So but we may send them over, but we have I'm not responsible to Mitch McConnell or anybody else except my members and the people who have worked so hard on this. Members and staff, patriotically, honoring the oath of office, the Constitution of the United States. And I will give them our best shot to find the truth for our bosses, the American people. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're going to the Niners game?
It would be my intention to go. I went to the one game in San Francisco. We watched all together the second game in Seattle. I have, unfortunately, responsibilities to save our country from peril. So this weekend, I have on my Democratic, wearing that hat of political leader this weekend. So my family will enjoy our season tickets at the 49er game. And then next week, get one game at a time. And then we'll see about the next
San Francisco Super Bowl.
Well, we've had the Baltimore-San Francisco Super Bowl. And that was hard because I had been rooting for both teams all along, right? And again, going to the 49er games and watching the Baltimore games on TV right there at the stadium. So what happens is they both win. Nobody was in a more difficult situation than I've been as a mother of the coaches. Brothers coaching the teams. And then you saw what happened at that game. But the D'Alessandros from Baltimore came all dressed in purple. And the Pelosi's from San Francisco all came in red, and we had a lovely family reunion. This time, I hope that we'd get a similar result, that we'd have both teams in. I already, because of my, shall we say, responsibilities to win the House for the Democrats and hopefully the Electoral College for the American people, I was scheduled to be in Florida that weekend. So I'm all set. One way or another.
Do you think Harry and Meghan will move to California?
Who knows? We're talking about Tom Brady. I mean, who knows? Who knows what happens with all this? But isn't it interesting? And it's wonderful because it's so unifying. You know, everybody, whatever your politics or whatever, forget it. It's about the team. And we all like to say, and we all believe that we're all Team USA. So however it turns out. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
There's some easing moments there at the last of her speech, her declaration that she was making to the public about all this, covering over several different things, several different issues, several different ideals. Um, it's good that we can still agree to disagree and not harbor horrible, bad feelings towards each other to the degree of being able to still smile and laugh and have our own personal lives that we can conduct and go about rather than be caught up in such of a rigorous dilemma of what the American people and the world almost got caught up in about 5 or 6 days ago. Getting back to the team, getting back to the originality of our forefathers and our builders' concept towards what our established government was ever established under to begin with. We must always keep that in focus in walking this tight line walk in democracy in the degree that we do not become a dictator, but at the same time willing to defend our own self-righteousness defense if others aren't willing to do it for us. I guess that's the best way that I can put that into an analogy to where you can basically understand it. And the fact of the matter is, there was other prophets of God throughout the Bible that was forced to have to defend themselves in taking life. Moses was one of them. And of course we see what happened in Samson's life, and we can see what happened in other great mighty prophets of God's life to the degree that they basically had to take up the sword themselves in defending that in which what they believed in and that in which what they stood for. And it was God and God alone who honored their works. If you really go back to Cain and Abel, whenever, and I always get this confused, whenever Cain come forth with a blood sacrifice and Abel, the brother, only had a grain sacrifice, God honored the blood sacrifice more so than the grain sacrifice. And because God honored that, the true, holy, righteous God, the God of Abraham, the God of David, the God of Jacob, the God of the Lord Jesus Christ, the other one was jealous. The other one was mad. The other one was disappointed. The other one was enraged because God found more favor in one brother than he did the other. This tug of war, this competition between light versus darkness, right versus wrong, good versus evil, is not something that is new. This is something that has been going on now for centuries and centuries and centuries. And ultimately, it will continue to go on until the final great battle, the battle of all battles pertaining to Armageddon, the apocalypse, whenever God himself will prove to humanity and to the spiritual world that what Lucifer, the Antichrist spirit, originally created in his own thinking, in his own atmosphere, in his own self-will, what Lucifer done is and was and always will continue to be looked upon as not just being defiant, but being immoral, unjust, and wrong to its original origin core. Just like Jesus said about the Antichrist spirit. For Lucifer was a liar. He was the father of all liars. He was a murderer and the father of all murders from the beginning. From the beginning. And Jesus clarified that by saying, let it be known in their law, the law of the demonic, the law of the unrighteous, the law of the wicked, the law of the ungodly. Let it be known in their law, for they hated me without a cause. Without any cause. Lucifer, the one that stood beside the archangel that played a harp, that was considered one of the beautifulest musicians in heaven, that played music, done what he done. Out of hatred, bitterness, evil, cruelty, that has brought so much condemnation to humanity upon to this planet. It has never been God, our Heavenly Father's will, for us to suffer and to go through the things that we have suffered in. It has never been our Heavenly Father's will that we had to go through so much anguish and pain and be railroaded and taken advantage of. It has never been God the Father's will that we had to play second fiddle to the devil, or second fiddle to the devil's people. And it will never be.
Market, in particular, since it's done so.
Spread.
Pelosi was saying nice things about Soleimani, simply not the case, as you pointed out at the top of your show, Andrea.
Casey Young, thank you so much. Jonathan Lemire and, of course, Ruth Marcus. Thanks to all. And coming up, more on those war powers, Republican Congressman and Iraq war vet Mike Gallagher on whether the administration should brief Congress on the Iran intel. You're watching Andrea Mitchell Reports on MSNBC.
That they did want to collaborate with other senior members of the royal family, but even that in a way is being taken as offensive, because this is a family, it's a unit, it's a firm. You don't collaborate with other members of the firm, you work with them and you make joint decisions, and if you aren't going to have that collective responsibility, then you're not part of the firm. So
I still find it to be remarkable. I still find it to be that we have went from one period or one environment of peace and utopia towards putting aside our differences in Christmas affairs, towards basically the whole world recognizing the existence of Christ on December the 25th, that we have went from one environment to another just in a heartbeat away. That just goes to show you the intensity of living in today's society pertaining to global internet and social media platforms, that just within a heartbeat away, from one day to another, from one event to another, we can go from one atmosphere to another atmosphere, from peace, love, and celebrating the birth of Christ to almost at the extent of a third world war, just within a short period of time. That is a frightful thought in today's society in comparison to how we used to deal with matters such as this 35, 40, 50, 60, 100 years ago.
Shalom.